Today, I'm going to do a project that's going to leave you absolutely floored. Stick around. So this floor is hardwood flooring, probably about 2-inch planks, and it's seen better days. I looked at the cost of refinishing it and it was a pretty hefty price tag. Fortunately, I got some laminate wood flooring at a really good price. In a perfect world, I would love to refinish this hardwood flooring, but financially, it just makes more sense at this point in this house to just put down the laminate. This is a big square room and it goes into another room, so it's actually not going to be that difficult of a project. The flooring that I have here is an interlocking floating floor. The only thing about the price that I got on this floor is that it doesn't come back. So I have to put down some backer foam separately. And even at that, the price of the two of them combined made the project well worthwhile. So let's get started. The first thing I did, I'm going to lay the floor. The hardwood goes this way. I'm going to lay the floor perpendicular to that just for aesthetics purposes. I measured the floor and it's about a 7 5/8 reveal on the floor. And you want to figure it out so you're not cutting little skinny strips if you can help it. So I measured out and I figure I'm going to be about 17.5 courses of flooring before I get to my break, which is pretty good. So the floor, as far as prep, cleaned, swept, vacuumed, you go over the floor, make sure there's no nails, staples, tacks, anything sticking up on the floor. I took all the heaters off. I tacked on anywhere that the baseboards were loose, and there was a shoe molding that I removed from the bottom of the baseboard. So the next thing I have to do now is put down my foam backer. I'm going over wood, so all I need to do is put down this foam. If you're going over tile, concrete, a regular wood subfloor, you might need to put down a vapor barrier depending on your situation, but like I always tell you, just follow the manufacturer's instructions. So this just rolls out. It has a little adhesive strip that helps stick it to the floor. I'm just going to roll out one course for now, just so I can get my floor started. And the purpose of this foam is not necessarily a padding, although it does provide some kind of padding. But the laminate floor is what's called a floating floor, and it moves and expands and contracts. And the main purpose of this is so the floor doesn't squeak. So let's get rolling. Okay, you can see right off the bat, I have an obstacle on my foam. I have it lined up in the room, so I just need to cut out the pipe. So I just fold it up. This stuff cuts real easy. Just take my scissors, cut to the pipe, and just kind of trim it. You don't got to be fancy with these things because the floor is going to lay over top of it, but you kind of want to get this stuff as flat as you can. So you just peel this sticky tape, and move down the floor. So I'm just kind of peeling this adhesive backing as I go, and just lining it up square to the wall and pressing it down. All right, so my first course, I've ripped the tongue off all of them and the groove off, and the tongue off the sidewall. So what you do, and again, refer to your instructions. My instructions say I need a 3/8 inch gap around the perimeter of the room. So before I started, I just took some scrap wood and ripped it down to 3/8. I'll put one on the edge, and I'll put one up here. and I'll just butt it up. But as you can see, my first board, I already have the obstacle here of this heater pipe. So I have to cut that out. Okay, so all I'm gonna do to figure out where I need to cut, I lined this up parallel, and I just have a straight edge. Then I'm just gonna make a line on one side of the pipe, and a line on the other side of the pipe. Put in my 3/8 inch spacer, so I know I need to be right here. So I just line that up with the edge of the board. And this is what I have to cut out. Okay, so I marked my mark on my board, and I have a hole saw that I'm going to drill with, but I'm actually going to drill a little bigger than I need, because remember, we need to allow for the expansion. So I just have it slipped in place, and between the molding on the back and the escutcheon on the front, that should be covered. But if need be, I can go back and glue in a piece. So now I just continue on with the rest of my first course. And how these lock together is, this tongue, there's a groove on the previous board, and you just kind of put it in an angle and click it down. Again, you want your spacer. You want to make sure your seams are aligned. So this one I have to tap just a little bit, but I'm not going to tap on the groove underneath. I'm going to line it up above the groove for this one and just give it a gentle tap. You don't want to mess up the floor at all. Okay, so I'm lined up, I'm down to the other end of the room, and I'm not going to need a full board. So what you do, rather than measure, is you take your board and you just flip it around, because this is your other end. This is going to be your cut end. You put it up against the wall with your spacer block, and then you just line it up and mark where the two boards meet. And that's where you cut. Okay, if you had a miter saw with a deep enough throat, that would be the easiest way to cut this. But I don't, so I just made this little quick sled for my table saw here. It's going to be sufficient just to do what I need for this. It gives you a nice clean cut. You could also cut this with a table saw or a jigsaw with a square if that's all you have. I imagine you could even do it with a handsaw if that's all you had. So I got it lined up and it fits, but I have another heater pipe, so I'm going to do that just the way I showed you down the other end. Okay, so to make it easy to get this one in, I just pulled the whole floor back a little bit, laid my last piece in, and then I'll just slide the whole floor in as one unit. So the first course is down, and all I have to do is repeat, keep repeating. Now with the next course, since you don't want your pieces to overlap, I'm going to cut the first piece in half, so I'll have overlapping joints. Kind of how I find it's easy to do until you get going and you get some weight on the floor is I put the next course together as a row, and then I'll hook it into the first course in one big piece. Yeah. Tilt it up. Okay, so I'm at the point where in this corner here, it's not a full width of a board. So what I did, I measured from this point to the wall, and then also where the end of this board is from this point to the wall, and I got 2 measurements. It's not straight. And then I had to subtract my 3/8 from my gap, made those 2 marks on either side, and just struck a line. And now I'll rip that down, and that should be, hopefully, fit right in there. Okay, so I just cut my line. You could probably cut it with anything. I cut it with a circular saw. You could, if you wanted to freehand it with a table saw or a jigsaw. Oh, and I should tell you, you have to keep in mind when you're measuring this, you always measure, don't measure from the end of the board where the tongue is. You have to measure from the face of the side of the board that's going to show. That's where you always account for your measurements. In there, let's pull up this cable. And that's nice. So when I put my quarter round back on, that'll cover that up nicely. And I'm good to go. So now you just do the same thing for all your rips. You just have to remember, you always have to have your gap in there for your expansion. Okay, so I'm going across this opening here, and I have to trim this board. Now I could measure a bunch of stuff, but it's easier just to line it up where you need it to be. So what I do is on the top of the floor, and I put a couple scraps of floor so I can get it at the same level. And then I line up the edge of the finished floor to the edge of this finished floor here. Line it up square, push it down to the floor till it touches on this wall here. And then to account for my reveal, rather than measuring, I just get my carpenter's pencil and put with the wide spot, and then just make a mark scribing against the wall. And that'll give me a pretty reasonable gap for expansion. And then for the other wall cut out, I do the same thing. I line up my finished floor lines, and I just scribe the same way. So I connect these 2 lines. And this is what I got to cut out. Okay, now that I'm ready to get to the other side of this opening, I have to do reverse cuts on this side. So I just took a scrap to see if one piece was going to span this thing, and it's actually too wide. So what I have to do is notch out here. I could put a full piece here and just run that way, but I'm not crazy about having a seam right here, so I'm going to bring it over to this side of the door a little bit. So I have to make another notch cut. I'm going to do it the same way. I just put this scrap piece down so I can use as kind of like a pattern. I take my 3/8 inch spacer, I lay it on there, and then I lay it on there, and I make my mark, and then I lay it on this face, and I make a mark this way, and I know this is where I have to notch a full piece. So I take a full piece, orient it the same way, and I just transfer my mark. So there's my mark that way. This direction, I can pretty much cut any way I like. So I'm just going to kind of line it up so it falls halfway in the door. And I'm going to be right here. So I'll just transfer those marks this way and across and cut it out. Okay, my board is cut. I'll just see if it fits. Good. Generally, do I like having this little sliver here? No. But it'll be supported by the shoe molding that goes back on. So I'm not super worried about it. So I just have to put a little piece in there, which I'll do, but I'm going to go this way. And I'm going to have to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now that I'm to this stair area, there's going to be a piece of molding of some kind that goes around here. I have to scribe this piece of board flooring to go up against here. I don't happen to have a set of scribes on me, so I'm gonna have to kind of make something up here. And what I've decided is I have a piece of board and I'm lining it up on the end and running it over kind of to where it meets the straight of the floor, and I mark that. And now I'm just going to go cut this board off here. Okay, so I have my board. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it square to the floor. I'm going to put my pencil up against it and just kind of run it down parallel, keeping it parallel along the curve of the stair. I mean, it kind of hangs up on the carpet a little bit, but if I just take it off a little bit, that should be my stair contour. I'm just going to cut it out with a jigsaw. Okay, so I made my cut with a jigsaw. It's not the greatest cut in the world, but again, there's going to be trim there to hide that. And slide it in place. And that actually kind of worked. So there's just a little tip how I did that without a set of scribes. So then I can just continue on down the line. So after I put down my floor, I just went around the gaps with some shoe molding, and this room looks great. I have a brand new floor with very little hassle. So that's it. Using the steps that I showed you, I have a brand new pre-finished floor in just a few hours. Once you cut out, get started, cut out around your obstacles, the floor just bangs together really simply. Remember, clean up the floor you're going over first. Make sure there's no bumps, nails sticking up or anything like that that could be an obstacle. If you have a concrete floor, like if you're putting this in a basement, you're going to have to lay down a vapor barrier first, but make sure you read and follow the instructions that come with your product. Also, when you're putting down the floor, make sure you buy the flooring at least 2 or 3 days ahead of time and set it in the room so it acclimates the conditions of that room. I hope this project was helpful and gave you the tips and pointers you need to put down a wood laminate floor in your own home. So if this is your first time here, I'd ask you to subscribe to the HomeCraft Chronicles. That way you won't miss out on any of the great projects I have in store for you. So until I see you next time, remember, take care of yourself and your home. I'll see you soon.